anyway, chose Kansas City, where my family is, or Richmond, where her family had lived, and proved a better negotiator. So we've been in Richmond for 23 years now. But what we found is once we picked cities and then spent time in the cities, we became aware of so many options where there wasn't information at the law school placement office, and nobody on the faculty would have been able to tell us anything about it. We became aware of law firms that never sent anybody to interview because they were just too busy working. We became aware of public service opportunities that didn't send information to law school placement opportunities. We became aware of fantastic neighborhood organizations and civic organizations that use lawyers, if not full-time, on volunteer bases. And so I would say maybe the first thing to do, if you're thinking about a public service career, is ask what is the community that you hope to serve. Largely that will be a geographic question. I think if you narrow down your geographic search, it will enable you to get really deep into understanding the needs of a community, and you'll suddenly become aware of opportunities. But it might not just be a geographic narrowing. Maybe the community you want to serve is a particular interest group or a particular cause. But in some ways, begin by asking yourself the question, what is the community you want to serve? More than a vague interest in public interest or public service. I think that will really help you get started. And it proved that way with us because coming to Richmond, and I remember saying kind of to each other when we looked at the various options we had, and Ann started as a legal aid lawyer, and I started working with a private firm. And we kind of had the sense in Richmond, rightly or wrongly, that the harvest was full and the laborers were few. There were other communities where there are tons of people doing public interest law. In Richmond, there weren't necessarily tons of them, but that was exciting too because it made us feel like we wouldn't just be a fungible commodity or a drop in the bucket, that we might be able to really make a difference in people's lives. And so that would be another thing about picking the community. I know at Harvard, and I don't know if it's quite the same at UVA, an overwhelming percentage of our classmates went to very, very large cities. Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, Boston. A small percentage went to smaller cities. I think it's a wonderful thing to focus on smaller communities because smaller communities really give you the ability to have a great effect. So first rule is pick the community first that you want to serve, and that'll get you oriented the right way. The second thing is, and this is real practical, be realistic about the salary you expect to make. I have a lot of friends who wanted to be public interest lawyers, but they also wanted to make the same salary that everybody else at Harvard Law School was making. And that's just unrealistic. It's unrealistic. I mean, it's fair to want to have it all. Everybody wants to have it all. But, if I can give you very practical advice, it would be this. Get used to living on not a lot of money, on a little bit of money. And then you'll have the freedom to do what you really want to do. Because a lot of people get used to living on a lot of money, and then they feel chained to having to make a lot of money. And they feel that restricts their options in terms of doing what it is they want to do. So if you can live beneath your means, I guess, is what I am suggesting to you. And be realistic about salary and what you would expect to earn if you pursue public interest. You're going to have a happy public interest career, and you're going to make a good salary. It might not be what some of your classmates make, but compared to the median income of Virginia or the median income of the United States or the median income of the neighbors you'll be living with, you're going to be doing fine. When I joined, I was with a firm, my first firm. I told them when I signed up, I really want to do a lot of pro bono work. And they said, sure, we know that's great. Well, I don't think they'd ever had somebody there who really wanted to do a lot of pro bono work. And so I found very early that my desire to do a lot of pro bono work was creating some real conflicts with the firm I was in. And so I switched to another firm, and I went in up front. I had met this firm in the courtroom, and they liked what I did, and they wanted me to join them. And I said, I really want to do a lot of pro bono work. And we negotiated a deal pretty much up front where I started at 2/3 of the salary that others were making who were in my level of experience. But they gave me latitude to do pro bono work. And then they gave me latitude to run for elective office. There were times during my 17-year career, there was one year in my 17-year career at my law firm where I was the managing director and I was the mayor of Richmond, and I was making less than a first-year associate. because I wasn't billing a lot of hours, and the hours that I billed were on a case that was a pure contingency case that I worked on for 6 years, virtually full-time, with no revenue coming in till the very end. And then we actually did pretty well. But there was a lot of period along the way where at my firm I was making less than a first-year associate, even though I was the managing director of a firm where a lot of the partners were doing very well. Every once in a while I got envious of others. I would see what people were making and see, what folks were driving, and I wasn't driving what they were driving, and I wasn't making what they were making. But my firm didn't owe me dollars for doing work that weren't bringing dollars in the door. My wife Ann worked at Legal Aid and then worked part-time at Legal Aid. A cum laude graduate from Harvard Law School could earn a lot better salary than she did as a legal aid lawyer, definitely as a part-time legal aid lawyer. But we focused on what it was we wanted to do, and then we adjusted our lifestyle accordingly and got used to living on a lot less than we might have made. And that trade-off is not one that we've ever questioned. We've been extremely happy, and we've made a good living. It just hadn't been a good living relative to others we went to law school with. One year we got a survey that they send out on like a 10th anniversary of our law school class, and they asked you to fill out all kinds of questions about your happiness with your profession, etc. And then at the end you were supposed to check boxes about your income level, and both Ann and I were in the less than, the bottom income box. But again, that's just relative to a standard that's not the real world standard. That was just relative to Harvard Law School grads. So that's the second thing I would say to you. If you want to be about public service, you have to be realistic. If you really want to make a commitment to public service, there will be folks who are sitting next to you here in class every day. You may have had better grades than them, and they're going to make a lot more money than you. But you can do a lot of good, be very happy, and make a fine living, even if maybe not what others are. So that's my second tip. My third tip is this, and this is really Ann's tip. Ann has this theory that she has had for a long time, even back to the day we were in law school, that you lead serial lives. So the decision you make about where you go after you graduate from law school is not the last decision you're going to make about your career. You don't need to feel too stressed out about making it perfect, because we all lead lives now where you don't go to the same law firm and stay there for most of your career. That used to happen. That's not what happens now. And so law clerk, legal aid lawyer, part-time legal aid lawyer, stay-at-home mom, judge, first lady, law clerk, private sector lawyer, public servant. You do different things over the course of your life, and that's good. And that takes some of the pressure off some of the decisions that you have to make, because they don't have to be perfect. One of the things I learned very early on in my legal career is I focused a lot in making the choice about where I first went on what kind of work I would be doing. And I didn't focus a lot on the question of what I thought about the people that I would be working with. And I learned that the people that you're going to be working with is actually a much, much more important thing in some ways than the technical kind of work that you'll be doing. But you can get that all right, as you get out, again, focusing on a community, getting into a community, really wanting to change a community. You can get that all right. You can change, you can grow, you can take different positions. It's not just that you can, you will. I can say that about really virtually everybody here. Your career path will take you in twists and turns into places that you didn't necessarily think you'd end up, but that's a very positive thing. And if you look at your career that way, not as I'm going to do this thing in public interest law and here's the goal that I'm shooting for in 30 or 40 years, but as a series of opportunities, many of which you don't know today, I think that's the realistic view of careers. And it matches the point that I wanted to make, that I made earlier, which is the great thing about if you want to be public interest or public service, there's so many ways to do it. We started our career, legal aid lawyer, private sector lawyer. It was not a month into my work at my private firm wanting to do public interest law, but still kind of having a vague understanding of it, that somebody walked in, asked a partner who referred it to the newest lawyer of a fair housing case. I hadn't really thought in. I'd never taken a course about fair housing, didn't know the fair housing statutes, hadn't really thought about it, but I was the low man on the totem pole at my 12-member firm, so suddenly this was my case. Well, I ended up taking that case and then spending 60% probably of my 17-year career doing fair housing work all over the United States. And so be open to, kind of new experiences and twists and turns and changes. once you get centered in the community where you want to make a difference,